The store was quiet except for the soft beeps of the scanner and the faint hum of the lights above. The young woman stood at the checkout, her fingers trembling as she tried to count out the small pile of coins in her hand. Her coat was old frayed at the sleeves, and though she tried to hide it, she looked exhausted. Beside her stood her little daughter holding a cupcake with a single candle stuck in the middle. The flame flickered gently, and her eyes sparkled as if this one small cupcake was the most magical thing she had ever seen. The cashier tapped impatiently, and the line behind them grew restless. The young mother whispered to herself, recounting the coins again, hoping they would somehow stretch enough to cover the milk bananas and the cupcake. But the reality was cruel. She did not have enough. Her voice broke when she looked up and said softly, "I am sorry. Maybe I can leave the milk." She pulled the carton aside, her heart breaking because she knew how much her daughter needed. The little girl did not understand. She just looked at her mother and then back at the cupcake in her tiny hands. She whispered, "Mommy, will I still get to blow my candle?" Her voice was so pure, so full of hope, it pierced through the heavy silence of the checkout line. Some people behind them sighed in irritation, others turned away, pretending not to notice. But one man standing a few feet away noticed him. He was tall, well-dressed in a dark coat with a fine scarf. His shoes polished his hair neatly in place. He looked like someone who belonged in boardrooms and luxury hotels, not in the middle of a grocery line watching a stranger struggle. He had only come in to buy something small, maybe a quick snack, before returning to his office. Yet in that moment he could not look away. The young mother reminded him of something long buried, a memory of his own mother struggling when he was young before his life had changed. The cashier cleared her throat and said, "Miss, you do not have enough money." The mother swallowed hard, her cheeks flushed with shame. She picked up the bananas and tried to decide whether to keep them or put them back. She did not even notice the man stepping forward until his voice cut through the silence. "We'll take care of it," he said firmly. His deep voice carried authority and kindness at the same time. The mother froze, the cashier blinked, and the little girl looked up with wide eyes. The man placed his credit card on the counter. "Pay for everything," he added, and then turned to the little girl. He bent down slightly, his eyes softening. "Happy birthday, princess." The girl smiled shyly, clutching the cupcake as if it were treasure. Her mother shook her head quickly. "No, sir, you do not need to, please. I cannot accept charity." She tried to push the items back toward the counter, but the man gently stopped her. "This is not charity," he said calmly. "This is a gift, and sometimes the most powerful thing we can give is kindness. Accept it for her, if not, for yourself." Tears welled in her eyes. She wanted to argue, wanted to hold on to her pride, but when she looked at her daughter staring at the cupcake with such pure joy, she could not. She whispered, "Thank you," her voice trembling. The cashier scanned the items and bagged them. The man handed the little girl the bag with a warm smile. When she looked up at him, her eyes lit up as if he were a hero from one of her fairy tales. She asked shyly, "Mister, are you an angel?" He chuckled softly. "No, I am just someone who knows what it feels like to need help." The mother wiped her tears quickly as she took the bags. She wanted to ask his name, to know who this stranger was who had just stepped into their lives, but he only nodded politely and began to step away. Yet fate had other plans. The little girl ran forward, tugging at his coat, and said, "You should come to my birthday. I picked this cupcake for me, but we can share it." The man paused, his heart tightening. No one had invited him to anything with such innocence in years. His world was full of board meetings, contracts, and people who only wanted his wealth. Never had anyone invited him with such sincerity. He crouched down and looked at her tiny face, glowing with excitement. He said softly, "Maybe I will." That evening, after he had left the store, he could not stop thinking about them. The way the mother's hands shook, the way the little girl's eyes lit up with a single cupcake. He sat in his luxury penthouse with its glass walls and million-dollar view of the city, but none of it filled the emptiness inside. He thought about how different life could have been if someone had not helped his mother when he was small. The next day, he returned to the same store hoping to see them. Again, he had asked the cashier quietly if she knew the woman, but the cashier shrugged. "She comes here sometimes with her daughter, that is all I know," he said. So the man waited a few evenings watching the store entrance until finally he saw them. Again, the little girl ran into her mother's arms clutching a worn school bag. The man approached hesitantly and smiled. The mother looked surprised. "Sir, you again?" He nodded. "I told your daughter I might come to her birthday. Did she tell you?" The little girl giggled. "Mommy, I told him he has to come." The mother blushed, embarrassed. "Sir, I appreciate your kindness, but we have nothing to offer you. We live in a very small place. It would not be right." The man shook his head. "What matters is not the size of the place, but the size of the heart. And yours is the biggest I have seen in a long time." That day changed everything. The man visited them often, not as a benefactor, but as a friend. He brought small gifts for the little girl, books, toys, sometimes groceries for the mother. But more than that, he brought something far more valuable. He brought hope. Slowly the walls the young woman had built around her heart began to crumble. She realized this man, though wealthy, was not cold or arrogant. He was gentle, thoughtful, and carried his own scars. The little girl adored him. She called him Mr. Angel and insisted he sit beside her whenever they ate. Together they laughed, together they healed. And little by little the bond between them grew into something no one had expected. Months later, the mother stood in a new dress, her eyes shining with tears as the man, now her closest companion, held her hand. He had not only helped her at the checkout that day, he had changed the course of their lives. He had given them love, respect, and a family they never thought they would have. And for him, the man who had everything, money, power, and success, he realized he had been missing the simplest yet greatest treasure of all: a family, a home, a reason to smile when he woke up each morning. It had all begun with a cupcake, a handful of coins, and a little girl who believed even strangers could be angels.